Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair, and Your Excellency, thank you. Thanks to University of Murdoch for inviting us for this. I'm here to share with you a very simple program that UNDP and Southern African Institute for Environmental Assessment and African Development Bank are implementing. And this is in relation to some of the discussions around the fact that infrastructure development, as His Excellency said, has a link to HIV. And this is just one of the many ways in trying to open up the space to see how, in terms of having a forward-looking perspective to things, how we can use environmental assessments as a process of doing that. So I will not go through most of these, but I think that the main point here is that we talk about lots of the achievements of the past decade in terms of the HIV response. And I think right from about 2010, very simple discussions around some of the social and structural drivers of the epidemic are emerging. And I think one of them is the fact that even the way we do development itself, which is based on large capital projects, is also provides some good opportunities for us to look at how we can utilize, large infrastructure development as a basis for expanding access to health and HIV. So I think we, in the Southern and Eastern African region, we have a kind of a scenario where we have HIV, high HIV burden, but at the same time, there's a lot of discussion and ongoing infrastructure boom. And as His Excellency said, this creates employment, it's good for economic growth, and African Development Bank and all the others are providing a lot of money to expand infrastructure. But I think the point is that the same large infrastructure projects present a very wonderful avenue for us to look at expanding access, and we haven't explored that as much. And so this project is looking at Africa's new ways of harnessing our natural resources, which are all based on looking at strengthening and improving large infrastructure projects as a way of tapping into our natural resources and saying, how do we deal with, and environmental assessments, interestingly, has become part of that discussion around how do we utilize a tool that we do have. All our countries have signed up and is a legal requirement. It helps us to predict not just the positive impacts of all these projects, but also the negative impacts. It provides us with opportunities to look at how to deal with that, and yet we haven't explored it to the full. And these are some of the interesting statistics around the extractive industry. I think we don't need to go through that. But again, 2-3 years ago, a quick review of 10 country legislations just provided the very good basis for this work. And all of what that says is that, yes, there's a tool called environmental assessment. Some call it environmental and social assessment. Others call it environmental, social, and health assessment. There's so much to talk about, but at the heart of it, the social side of things, and particularly issues of HIV in a region where it is also, in terms of prevalence, it's also one of the highest, is rarely talked about. And some of the factors that have contributed to that fact is that the capacities of our national environmental management authorities that are supposed to be helping to bring these issues into environmental assessment is one issue, but also HIV stakeholders like us. When we hear the whole words around environmental assessment, we say, it's for the environment people, so we don't also engage in the environmental assessment process. And that is one of the big issues around capacities that we would have to deal with. Again, the experts who do and conduct these environmental assessments, most of them are environmental scientists and will look at the biophysical environment and will rarely look at some of the issues relating to issues of HIV and gender as we are talking about. And then again, the same review we did in 10 countries reveals something very interesting, that 10 countries, all of them trying to define environment, and you have 9 different definitions. And out of the 9 definitions, only a few of them talk about the social environment as part of the environment. And I think this is one of the issues that have led to, the skewness of the discussions around dealing with HIV within environmental assessments. Then you have the issue about developers thinking that, oh, probably, social issues should be left to the government to deal with, and therefore it's not part of our bottom line, and we wouldn't deal with it. And then we have very weak monitoring systems that are able to capture issues of HIV and gender within environmental assessment. So these are some of the big issues relating to, how to balance that. So in terms of this project, it's simple. We're looking at 4 basic objectives. One, trying to create more awareness, particularly at policy level, to make sure that policy level people understand that there are these negative links and that we can deal with them. It's also about the officials who plan for environmental assessment to say, look, how do you deal with issues of gender? Is it about capacity? Is it about tools? We can help you deal with that. It's also about the legal and regulatory framework that probably also de-emphasizes issues of HIV to some extent. So these 4 objectives are what the program is dealing with. And what have we done so far? We have done the review in 10 countries. We have developed a very simple guideline that helps the key actors in the environmental assessment process to look at what key questions are there to be asked when you are doing environmental assessments, and how do you look at issues of data, how do you look at issues of partnerships to make sure that you bring this into your assessment. Because when you bring it into your assessment, well, then it brings out issues around mitigation in a much more evidence-informed way. So we've done trainings in many countries, I think 8 or 9 countries now, and hopefully we would expand this project with the help of African Development Bank. We have most partners are now what you see on the board, but I think University of Murdoch would be one fantastic partner coming on board, and we're hoping that we can have more partners to be able to begin a process of making sure that across the continent, environmental assessments becomes the gateway through which we can better predict social impacts of large infrastructure projects, through which we can help in the formulation of evidence-informed interventions that go with some of these projects, particularly with the extractive sector. And then together we can also then devise monitoring systems that are able to capture all of these issues. We've got few challenges. I think I'll highlight only one of the challenges, which is about data. And that is where I think issues around our collaboration with the University of Murdoch in terms of research and making sure that we are able to harness some of the good practices that are going on to share with others becomes very important. So this is where we are. Thank you very much.